They're not very clever, are they?
Good.
Stupid people are easier to destroy.
My name is Will Harlan, and I fix cars for a living. Not glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps my hands busy while my mind wanders to darker places. At 39, I've learned that people are a lot like broken engines. They make weird noises before they completely fall apart. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Take my wife Elise, for instance. She used to hum while making coffee in the morning. Now she just stares at her phone like she's waiting for the Pope to send her a personal invitation to Vatican City. The humming stopped about 3 months ago, right around the time she started working late every Tuesday and Thursday. "Daddy, why does Mom check her phone during dinner now?" Ruby asked me last week. My 10-year-old daughter has this way of cutting straight to the heart of things that would make a surgeon jealous. Maybe she's playing a really important game, I told her, which wasn't entirely a lie. Elise was definitely playing a game. I just wasn't sure what the rules were yet. Our house sits in one of those middle-class neighborhoods where everyone pretends to be happier than they actually are. You know the type: perfect lawns hiding septic problems, fresh paint covering rotting wood. The American dream with a few loose screws. Elise works as an HR manager at TechFlow Solutions, a company that makes software for other companies to manage their software. It's as boring as it sounds, but it pays well enough for her to afford those designer purses she's been buying lately. The ones she thinks I don't notice. I notice everything. It's an occupational hazard when you spend your days diagnosing problems that people can't see. Last Tuesday, I was in the garage working on Mrs. Peterson's Honda when I heard Elise on the phone in the kitchen. The window was cracked, and her voice carried that particular tone women use when they're talking to someone they want to impress. "No, Nathan, I can't tonight. Will's home." A pause. I know. Soon." Nathan. That would be Nathan Corwin, her boss. The guy who drives a vintage Mustang and wears suits that cost more than most people's rent. I'd met him at the company Christmas party. Handsome in that artificial way, like a Ken doll someone left in the sun too long. The funny thing about betrayal is how obvious it becomes once you start looking for it. The late nights, the new perfume, the way she suddenly started caring about her appearance again. Not for me, of course. I was still getting the same distracted kisses and tired smiles I'd been receiving for months. "Will, we need to talk," Elise said last Friday night after Ruby went to bed. She was wearing her serious face, the one she usually reserved for discussing mortgage payments or parent-teacher conferences. We sat at the kitchen table like two strangers waiting for a bus. The silence stretched between us like a rubber band about to snap. "I need some time to think," she continued, not meeting my eyes. "About us. About everything." "Okay," I said. "Because what else do you say when your wife of 12 years tells you she needs to think about whether she wants to stay married?" "I'm going to take a week away, clear my head, maybe visit my sister in Chicago." Her sister lives in Denver, but I didn't mention that. Sometimes you have to let people dig their own graves. "When?" I asked. "This weekend. I've already arranged time off work." Of course she had. Elise always was a planner. Probably had this conversation rehearsed in her head a dozen times. "What about Ruby?" "She can stay with you. You're good with her." I'm good with her because I'm her father. Not because I'm doing Elise a favor, but again, I kept my mouth shut. Sometimes the best response is no response at all. After she went upstairs, I sat in the kitchen drinking a beer and thinking about timing. Funny how she needed this week away right after Nathan's wife went to visit her mother in Florida. I knew this because Nathan had mentioned it at the Christmas party, complaining about being a bachelor for a week. Some bachelors play golf, others apparently play with other men's wives. I found the hotel receipt the next morning while doing laundry. It had fallen out of her jacket pocket. The Grandview Hotel, downtown. A suite reservation for 2 people, Elise Harlan and Nathan Corwin. I guess she found her mind somewhere between the minibar and the king-sized bed. The receipt was dated for next weekend, the same weekend she'd be visiting her sister in Chicago. The same weekend Nathan would be playing Bachelor while his wife was out of town. I sat on the edge of our bed, holding that piece of paper like it was a loaded gun. Part of me wanted to confront her right then, to wave it in her face and demand an explanation. But the smarter part of me, the part that had learned patience from years of diagnosing engine problems, told me to wait. You don't fix a problem until you understand exactly what's broken. Ruby came bouncing into the bedroom, her hair still messy from sleep. "Daddy, can we make pancakes?" "Sure, kiddo," I said, slipping the receipt into my pocket. "Let's make the best pancakes your mom's ever going to miss." Monday morning brought rain and a visitor I wasn't expecting. I was under the hood of a Chevy Silverado when I heard heels clicking across my garage floor. Not many people wear heels to an auto shop, so I figured it was either someone lost or someone with very specific business. I rolled out from under the truck to find a woman in her late 30s standing in my doorway. She was tall, elegant, and had the kind of cold beauty that could freeze water at 20 paces. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a perfect bun, and her gray suit probably cost more than I made in a month. "Are you Will Harlan?" she asked, her voice carrying just a hint of an accent I couldn't place. "Depends on who's asking," I replied, wiping my hands on a shop rag. "Vanessa Corwin," she said, and suddenly the pieces clicked into place. "I believe you know my husband." Nathan's wife. In person, she was even more intimidating than she'd been at the Christmas party. Back then, she'd seemed bored and distant. Now she looked like a predator who'd just spotted wounded prey. "Mrs. Corwin," I said, standing up, "what can I do for you?" "We need to discuss your wife and my husband's recent business retreat." The way she said business retreat made it clear she knew exactly what kind of business they'd been conducting. "I'm not sure I follow," I said, playing dumb. Sometimes it's better to let the other person show their cards first. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. "Perhaps these will clarify things." Inside were photographs. Elise and Nathan entering the Grandview Hotel. Elise and Nathan at dinner. Elise and Nathan kissing in the hotel parking lot. The pictures were professionally taken, which meant Vanessa had hired someone to follow them. "How long have you known?" I asked. 3 weeks, she said. "My private investigator is very thorough. The question is, how long have you known?" I pulled the hotel receipt from my wallet and showed it to her. "Since Saturday." She examined it with the same cold precision she probably used to dissect her enemies at whatever high-powered job she held. "They're not very clever, are they?" "Not particularly, no." "Good. Stupid people are easier to destroy." I liked her already. "What did you have in mind?" I asked. They return from their romantic getaway tomorrow evening. Elise will come home full of lies about her wonderful week in Chicago, and Nathan will tell me about his lonely bachelor week. I propose we give them a proper welcome home. We spent the next hour planning. Vanessa had done her homework. She knew about the hotel, the fake business trips, even the cozy text messages they'd been sending each other. Her private investigator had been busy. "Why come to me?" I asked. "You could handle this yourself." "Because," she said, "revenge is always sweeter when it's shared. Besides, I need a witness to Nathan's reaction when he realizes his little secretary fantasy is over." "Elise isn't a secretary." "They're all secretaries to men like Nathan," Vanessa said with a smile that could cut glass. "He's done this before. I've just been waiting for the right moment to end it permanently." After she left, I called my sister Jenny to see if she could watch Ruby for a few hours the next evening. Jenny had been through her own messy divorce and understood the importance of proper timing in these situations. "You sure about this, Will?" she asked. "Once you pull this trigger, there's no going back." "I'm sure," I said. Elise made her choice. Now she gets to live with the consequences. That night, I made Ruby's favorite dinner, spaghetti and meatballs with extra cheese. She chattered about school and her friends while I tried to memorize every detail of her face. Tomorrow would change everything, and I wanted to remember this moment when things were still simple. "Dad, are you okay?" Ruby asked, twirling spaghetti around her fork. "You look sad." "Just thinking about work stuff, kiddo." "Is Mom coming home tomorrow?" "Yeah, she'll be home." "Good. I missed her." I missed her too, or at least I missed the woman she used to be. The woman who hummed while making coffee and kissed me goodbye every morning. That woman had been gone for months. Tomorrow we'd just make it official. After Ruby went to bed, I sat in my workshop cleaning tools and thinking about marriage. 12 years we'd been together, and I'd thought we were happy. Not perfect, but happy enough. Apparently, I'd been wrong. The funny thing about betrayal is how it changes your perspective on everything. All those late nights Elise claimed to be working, all those business trips that seemed to multiply over the past year, all those times she'd been too tired or too stressed for intimacy. It all made sense now. I wasn't angry, exactly. Anger was too simple an emotion for what I felt. It was more like disappointment mixed with relief. Disappointment that the woman I'd married could lie so easily, and relief that I finally understood why our marriage had felt like driving a car with the parking brake on. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Everything is arranged. Tomorrow at 7 p.m. Don't be late." I texted back, "I'll be there." Then I went upstairs and slept better than I had in months. Tuesday evening arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that makes you think of endings and new beginnings. I dropped Ruby off at Jenny's house with instructions to do her homework and not ask too many questions about why Daddy needed to run errands. "You look nervous," Jenny observed as Ruby ran inside to play with her cousins. I feel nervous, I admitted. Good. That means you still have a conscience. Just remember, she did this to herself. I drove home slowly, taking the long way through downtown. The Grandview Hotel sat on 5th Street like a monument to other people's secrets. I wondered how many marriages had ended in those rooms, how many lies had been told in that lobby. Vanessa's black Mercedes was already parked in my driveway when I arrived. She sat in the driver's seat, checking her watch with the patience of a woman who'd been planning this moment for weeks. "Ready?" she asked as I approached her car. "As ready as anyone can be for this kind of thing." "Nathan should be home by 6:30. Elise?" "She texted an hour ago. Her flight lands at 7, so she'll be here by 8. "Perfect. That gives us time to prepare Nathan's welcome home surprise." We went inside, and I made coffee while Vanessa arranged her evidence on the kitchen table. Photos, hotel receipts, phone records, credit card statements. She'd built a case that would make a prosecutor jealous. "You're very thorough," I observed. "I'm a corporate lawyer," she said. "Thoroughness is how I make a living." That explained the predatory smile and the way she organized evidence like she was preparing for trial. At 6:45, we heard a car in the driveway. Nathan's vintage Mustang rumbled like a satisfied cat as he pulled up behind Vanessa's Mercedes. Through the window, I watched him check his appearance in the rearview mirror before getting out. He looked good, rested, confident, probably still glowing from his week of adultery. That was about to change. "Showtime," Vanessa murmured. Nathan knocked on the front door like he owned the place. I opened it to find him standing there with a confused smile, probably wondering why his wife's car was in another man's driveway. "Will," he said, extending his hand like we were old friends. "Is Vanessa here? Her office said she might be running errands in this area." "She's here," I said, stepping aside to let him in. "We've been having an interesting conversation." Nathan walked into the kitchen and stopped dead when he saw the photos spread across the table. His face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, recognition, fear, and finally a kind of desperate calculation as he tried to figure out how much trouble he was in. "Vanessa," he said carefully, "I can explain." "I'm sure you can," she replied without looking up from the evidence. "You always were creative with explanations. Remember when you explained that business trip to Atlanta? The one where you were actually in Miami with your secretary? That was different. Or the conference in Seattle where you spent 3 days at a spa in Napa with that consultant from the Morrison account?" Nathan's face had gone pale. Apparently, Elise wasn't his first extracurricular activity. "You've been busy," I said, pouring myself another cup of coffee. "How many women has it been, Nathan? 5? 10? Will, you don't understand." "I understand plenty. I understand that you've been screwing my wife for at least 3 months. I understand that you paid for a hotel suite where you two could play house while your wife was out of town. I understand that you're a lying piece of garbage who thinks other people's marriages are your personal playground." Nathan looked at Vanessa, probably hoping for some kind of support or sympathy. He didn't get any. "Sit down, Nathan," she said in the tone of voice she probably used to intimidate opposing counsel. "We need to discuss your future." "My future?" "Your future unemployment, your future divorce, your future reputation in this town, all the futures you threw away for a week in a hotel room with someone else's wife." Nathan sat down heavily, looking like a man who just realized he was standing in quicksand. "What do you want?" he asked. "Justice," Vanessa said simply, "and a front row seat when Elise gets home." We didn't have to wait long. At 8:15, I heard Elise's Honda pull into the driveway. Through the window, I watched her gather her luggage and check her reflection in the side mirror. She looked happy, relaxed, probably rehearsing whatever story she'd planned to tell me about her wonderful week in Chicago. She used her key to let herself in, calling out cheerfully, "Will, I'm home. You won't believe the traffic from the airport." She stopped talking when she walked into the kitchen and saw Nathan sitting at our table with his wife and a collection of incriminating photographs. "Oh," she said, and all the color drained from her face. "Hello, Elise," Vanessa said pleasantly. "Did you enjoy Chicago? Or should I say, did you enjoy the Grandview Hotel?" Elise's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She looked at Nathan, then at me, then at the photos on the table. "I can explain," she said finally. "I'm sure you can," I replied. "But first, let me introduce you to Vanessa Corwin, Nathan's wife. She's been very interested in hearing about your business trip." Elise set down her suitcase and tried to compose herself. I had to admire her nerve. Even caught red-handed, she was going to try to talk her way out of this. "Will, this isn't what it looks like. It looks like you spent a week in a hotel room with another woman's husband while lying to me about visiting your sister in Denver. Wait, I'm sorry. You said Chicago, didn't you? It's hard to keep track of all the lies. You don't understand the pressure I've been under at work. The pressure of choosing which lie to tell next? Nathan tried to stand up, probably thinking he could somehow salvage the situation, but Vanessa put a hand on his shoulder and pushed him back down. "Stay seated, dear," she said. "We're just getting started." The kitchen felt smaller, with 4 people and 12 years of marriage slowly dying in the middle of it. Elise stood by the doorway like she was calculating whether she could make a run for it, while Nathan sat at the table looking like a man who just realized his parachute had a hole in it. "Let's discuss the facts," Vanessa said, picking up one of the photographs. "This is you and Nathan entering the Grandview Hotel last Saturday afternoon. You're both smiling, which suggests this wasn't a kidnapping situation." Elise stared at the photo like it might disappear if she concentrated hard enough. "This one," Vanessa continued, selecting another picture, "shows you leaving the hotel restaurant Sunday morning. Nathan's hand is on your back in what most people would consider an intimate gesture." "Vanessa, please," Nathan started. "I'm not finished," she said sharply. "This receipt shows that Nathan paid for champagne and room service. Expensive champagne, the kind you drink when you're celebrating something special." She spread out more evidence, like a dealer laying down cards. Phone records showing dozens of calls between Nathan and Elise. Credit card statements proving Nathan had paid for dinners, flowers, and hotel rooms. Text messages that left nothing to the imagination. "My favorite," Vanessa said, holding up a printed text conversation, "is from last Tuesday. Nathan writes, 'Can't wait to have you all to myself this weekend.' And Elise responds, 'I told Will I'm visiting my sister. We'll have the whole week.'" Elise finally found her voice. "You had us followed." "I had my husband followed," Vanessa corrected. "You were just collateral damage. Though I have to say, you two weren't exactly subtle about it." "Will," Elise said, turning to me with tears in her eyes, "we need to talk privately. This isn't how I wanted you to find out." "How did you want me to find out?" I asked. "Were you planning to tell me at all, or were you just going to keep taking these little vacations until I figured it out myself?" "It's not what you think. I think you've been lying to me for months. I think you've been sleeping with your boss while pretending to be my wife. I think you used our daughter as an excuse to cover your tracks, telling her mommy had to work late when you were really playing house with Nathan." The mention of Ruby hit her hard. Whatever justifications she'd built up in her mind, she knew she couldn't explain this to a 10-year-old. "Ruby doesn't need to know about this," she said. "Ruby already knows something's wrong," I replied. "Kids aren't stupid, Elise. She's been asking me for weeks why you're always on your phone, why you don't smile anymore, why you seem so distant." Nathan finally spoke up. "Look, Will, I know this is difficult." "Difficult?" I laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. "Nathan, you have no idea what difficult looks like yet." I walked over to the counter and picked up a manila folder I'd prepared earlier. Inside were divorce papers, custody agreements, and a few other legal documents I'd had drawn up that afternoon. "Elise, you have 2 choices," I said. "You can sign these papers and agree to joint custody of Ruby, or we can go to court and let a judge decide what happens when one parent commits adultery and abandons their family for a week-long sex vacation." She stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. "You can't be serious," she said. "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." "Will, please, we can work this out. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness." "A moment of weakness?" Vanessa interjected. "You planned this for weeks. You lied to your husband, abandoned your daughter, and spent a week in bed with my husband. That's not a moment of weakness, that's a lifestyle choice." Nathan tried again to take control of the situation. "Everyone needs to calm down. We're all adults here. We can handle this rationally." "Rationally?" I said. "You want to talk about rational? Let me tell you what's rational, Nathan. Rational is me calling your company's board of directors and explaining how their vice president has been using company resources to conduct an affair with a subordinate. Rational is me posting these photos on social media and letting everyone in town know what kind of man you really are." "You wouldn't," he said, but his voice cracked a little. "Try me." Vanessa smiled like a shark who just smelled blood in the water. "Actually, Will, I have a better idea. Nathan, do you remember the morality clause in your employment contract?" Nathan's face went even paler. "Vanessa, you can't—" "I can, and I will. TechFlow Solutions has very strict policies about executives who engage in inappropriate relationships with employees. Something about maintaining professional standards and avoiding lawsuits." "But you're my wife. I'm your soon-to-be ex-wife, and as of tomorrow morning, I'll be the woman who destroyed your career by providing evidence of your affair to your board of directors." Elise finally seemed to understand that this wasn't a situation she could charm or cry her way out of. "What do you want from us?" "I want you to sign the divorce papers," I said. I want you to agree to reasonable custody arrangements for Ruby, and I want you to understand that your actions have consequences. And I want Nathan to experience what it feels like to lose everything he cares about, Vanessa added. His job, his reputation, his comfortable life, all the things he was willing to risk for a few nights in a hotel room. The kitchen fell silent except for the tick of the wall clock and the sound of Elise crying quietly. Nathan sat slumped in his chair, probably calculating how much his affair was going to cost him in alimony, legal fees, and lost income. "There's one more thing," I said, pulling out my phone. I recorded this entire conversation. Both Elise and Nathan stared at me in shock. "You recorded us?" Elise asked. "I recorded you confessing to adultery in my own home. Perfectly legal in this state and very useful in divorce proceedings." Nathan stood up abruptly. "This is insane. You can't destroy our lives over this." "I'm not destroying anything," I replied. "You two did that yourselves. I'm just making sure everyone understands what really happened." "Will, please," Elise said, reaching for my arm. "Think about Ruby. Think about our family." I pulled away from her touch. "I am thinking about Ruby. I'm thinking about how she deserves better than a mother who lies and a father who lets people walk all over him. I'm thinking about how she needs at least one parent who has some integrity left." The front door opened, and I heard Ruby's voice calling out, "Dad, I'm home. Jenny said you needed to pick me up, but she had to run to the store, so she dropped me off." Everyone in the kitchen froze. Ruby's footsteps echoed through the hallway as she headed toward the kitchen, probably wondering why there were so many cars in the driveway. "Mom," she said happily when she saw Elise. "You're back. How was Chicago? Did you bring me anything?" Elise knelt down and hugged Ruby tightly, probably trying to hide her tears. "I missed you so much, sweetheart." "I missed you too. Dad made pancakes every morning, but they weren't as good as yours." Ruby looked around the kitchen, taking in the tense atmosphere and the strangers at our table. "Who are these people?" "These are some friends of Mom's from work," I said quickly. "They were just leaving." Vanessa stood up and gathered her evidence. "Yes, we were just finishing our business discussion. It was very illuminating." Nathan followed her lead, standing up on unsteady legs. "We should go." "Yes," Vanessa said. "You should. You have a lot to think about tonight, Nathan. Both of you do." After they left, Ruby looked between Elise and me with the intuitive wisdom that children sometimes possess. "Are you guys fighting?" she asked. "We're having some grown-up problems," Elise said, her voice shaky. "But everything's going to be okay." Ruby nodded solemnly, then brightened up. "Can we have pizza for dinner? I'm starving." "Sure, kiddo," I said. "Why don't you go wash your hands while Mom and I finish talking?" After Ruby left the room, Elise and I stood in the kitchen looking at each other across a distance that felt like miles. "What happens now?" she asked. I handed her the divorce papers. "Now you decide whether you want to do this the easy way or the hard way." She took the papers with trembling hands. "Will, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I never meant for it to go this far." "How far did you mean for it to go?" She didn't have an answer for that. "Sign the papers, Elise. Let's end this with whatever dignity we have left." 3 weeks later, I was working late in the garage when I heard a car pull up outside. Through the window, I could see Nathan's Mustang sitting in my driveway, its engine ticking as it cooled. This was either going to be an apology or a threat, and I wasn't sure which would be more entertaining. Nathan climbed out of his car looking like a man who hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit was wrinkled, and he had the hollow-eyed look of someone whose world had recently exploded. "Will," he said as he approached the garage, "we need to talk." "Do we?" I asked, not looking up from the engine I was working on. "I thought Vanessa and I made ourselves pretty clear last time." "You've destroyed my life." "I didn't destroy anything. You did that all by yourself when you decided to screw my wife." He stepped into the garage, his hands clenched at his sides. "Vanessa filed for divorce. She's taking half of everything I own." "Sounds about right. The board of directors fired me. 20 years with that company, and they threw me out like garbage. Also sounds about right. I can't find another job. Word gets around fast in this industry." I finally looked up at him. "Are you here for sympathy, Nathan? Because I'm all out. I'm here to ask you to call off your wife. Ex-wife. And I don't control what Vanessa does. She's a grown woman with her own agenda." Nathan ran his hands through his hair, pacing back and forth in my garage like a caged animal. "She's destroying me piece by piece. First the divorce, then the job. Now she's going after my business connections. She's telling everyone what happened. The truth has a way of getting around. This isn't justice. It's revenge. Sometimes they're the same thing. He stopped pacing and looked at me with desperate eyes. "What do you want? Money? I'll pay you to make her stop." "I don't want your money, Nathan. I want you to understand something. When you decided to have an affair with my wife, you didn't just hurt me. You hurt my daughter. You broke up a family so you could get your kicks with someone new. Did you think about that when you were planning your little hotel getaway? It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "How was it supposed to happen? You were going to keep screwing my wife until you got bored, then move on to the next one while I stayed home raising my daughter and wondering why my marriage felt empty?" Nathan didn't have an answer for that, probably because he'd never thought past the hotel room. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "You're going to leave my property and never come back. You're going to stay away from my family, and you're going to live with the consequences of your choices like a grown man instead of running around town whining about how unfair life is. And if I don't, then Vanessa and I will get creative. Trust me, you don't want that." Nathan stared at me for a long moment, probably weighing his options. Finally, he turned and walked back to his car without another word. I watched him drive away, his taillights disappearing into the night like a bad memory. The next morning brought news that made the whole ordeal worthwhile. Jenny called me at the shop, laughing so hard she could barely speak. "Will, you have to see this," she said. "Someone vandalized Nathan's car last night. It's all over social media." I drove downtown during my lunch break to see the damage for myself. Nathan's precious Mustang sat in the parking lot behind his apartment complex, and it was a work of art. Someone had used bright red paint to write "cheater" across the hood in letters 3 feet tall. All 4 tires were slashed, and the windshield had a spider web of cracks radiating out from what looked like a baseball-sized impact point. A small crowd had gathered to admire the handiwork, and several people were taking pictures. I recognized a few faces from the neighborhood. Apparently word of Nathan's affair had spread faster than I'd expected. "Whoever did this is my hero," said Mrs. Patterson from down the street. "That man got exactly what he deserved." I didn't stick around to enjoy the show, but I did drive past the scene twice on my way back to the shop. Call it professional appreciation for a job well done. That evening, Vanessa called to check in on the situation. "Did you see Nathan's car?" she asked, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "Hard to miss," I replied. "Any idea who might have done something like that?" "Not a clue, but whoever it was has excellent taste in revenge." "How are things going with the divorce?" "Better than expected. Nathan's lawyer is pushing for a quick settlement. Apparently his client is eager to avoid any more public embarrassment." "Smart move." "What about Elise? How is she handling everything?" I looked out the window at Ruby, who was playing in the backyard with her dog. She'd adjusted to the new living arrangements better than I'd expected, probably because kids are more resilient than adults give them credit for. "She signed the papers," I said. "We have joint custody, and she's moving into an apartment across town next month. Ruby will spend weekends with her." "Any regrets?" I thought about that for a moment. "About the divorce? No. About the way it all went down? Maybe. But then I remember that she made her choice, and I made mine. Good for you. Some people deserve what they get." After I hung up, I went outside to push Ruby on the swing set. She chattered about school and her friends while I watched the sun set behind the trees in our backyard. Our backyard now, not mine and Elise's. "Dad," Ruby said as I pushed her higher, "are you happier now?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "You smile more now, and you don't look worried all the time like you used to." Kids really do see everything. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am happier." "Good. I like it when you're happy." That night, after Ruby went to bed, I sat in the kitchen with a beer and thought about the past month. The house felt different now, lighter somehow, like someone had opened all the windows and let the stale air out. I didn't miss the tension or the lies or the feeling that I was living with a stranger who looked like my wife. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "This is Nathan. I'm leaving town. I wanted you to know that I'm sorry for everything that happened. I hope you and Ruby will be happy." I stared at the message for a long time, then deleted it without responding. Some apologies come too late to matter. The next morning, I was opening the shop when a familiar black Mercedes pulled into the parking lot. Vanessa got out, looking as polished and dangerous as ever, but there was something different about her expression. She looked satisfied. "Nathan's gone," she said without preamble. "Gone?" "Packed up and left town sometime last night. His apartment is empty, and his car is nowhere to be found. Probably had it repainted first. Probably. His lawyer called this morning to finalize the divorce settlement. Apparently Nathan was very motivated to get everything signed quickly. I can imagine. Vanessa handed me an envelope. This is for you. Inside was a check for $10,000. What's this for? Consider it a bonus for being such an excellent partner in this endeavor. Nathan's settlement was quite generous, and I believe in sharing the wealth. I can't take this. Yes, you can. Use it to take Ruby on a vacation, or buy her something nice, or just put it away for her college fund. Think of it as Nathan's contribution to her future happiness. I looked at the check again. $10,000 would go a long way toward securing Ruby's future, and it seemed fitting that Nathan should pay for it. Thank you, I said. Thank you. I couldn't have destroyed him nearly as effectively without your help. She got back in her Mercedes and drove away, leaving me standing in my parking lot with a check and a sense of closure I hadn't expected to feel. That afternoon, I picked Ruby up from school and took her out for ice cream. We sat in the park, watching other families play on the playground while we discussed her weekend plans with Elise. Are you sad about the divorce? She asked, licking chocolate ice cream off her spoon. A little, I said honestly. But sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that can't be fixed. The important thing is that your mom and I both love you very much, and that's never going to change. I know, she said matter-of-factly. Can we get a dog? We already have a dog. Can we get another dog? We'll see. As we walked back to the car, Ruby slipped her hand into mine. Dad? Yeah? I'm glad you're my dad. I'm glad you're my daughter. And for the first time in months, I meant it completely. 6 months later, I was working in the garage when I heard a car pull up outside. Through the window, I saw Elise getting out of her Honda, looking nervous and uncertain. She'd been picking Ruby up for her weekend visits, but this was the first time she'd gotten out of the car. Will, she said as she approached the garage, do you have a minute? Sure, I said, wiping my hands on a shop rag. Ruby's inside doing homework if you're early for pickup. Actually, I wanted to talk to you first. She looked different, thinner, tired, older somehow. The confident woman who'd walked out of my life 6 months ago had been replaced by someone who seemed unsure of herself. I heard Nathan left town, she said. So I'm told? Did you know he tried to contact me before he left? He wanted me to go with him. Did you? No. I told him I was done making stupid decisions. We stood in awkward silence for a moment, listening to the sounds of the neighborhood. Kids playing, dogs barking, lawnmowers running, normal sounds of normal lives. I want you to know that I regret everything, she said finally. Not just getting caught, but all of it. The lying, the affair, the way I threw away our family for something that was never going to last. Okay, I said, because I wasn't sure what else to say. Adi, I know you'll probably never forgive me, and I understand that, but I needed you to know that I realize what I lost. Elise, I said gently, we can't go back. Too much has happened. I know, I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. She turned to go, then stopped. You look good, Will. Happy? I am happy. Good, you deserve to be. After she left with Ruby, I went back to work on the engine I'd been rebuilding. It was a classic Mustang, not unlike the one Nathan used to drive. The owner wanted it restored to original condition, which meant stripping away years of modifications and bad repairs to get back to what it was supposed to be. Sometimes that's the only way to fix something that's been broken for too long. You have to tear it down to the foundation and start over. As I worked, I thought about the past year and everything that had changed. The divorce was final, Ruby was thriving, and I'd learned that I was stronger than I'd given myself credit for. Vanessa had moved to another city for a new job, but she still sent Christmas cards and the occasional update on her new life. The garage door was open, letting in the warm spring air and the sounds of the neighborhood. This was my life now, simple, honest, uncomplicated. I fixed things that were broken, raised my daughter, and slept well at night knowing that I'd done the right thing even when it was hard. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Jenny. Will, you need to turn on Channel 7 News, right now. I wiped my hands and went inside to find the remote. The news was running a story about a multi-car accident on the interstate about 50 miles outside of town. A vintage Mustang had been involved, and the driver had been taken to the hospital with serious injuries. The reporter was standing next to a car that looked very familiar, despite the damage. Red paint was still visible on parts of the hood, spelling out a word that had been partially obscured by the wreckage. The driver has been identified as Nathan Corwin, formerly of this area, the reporter was saying. Police say alcohol may have been a factor in the accident. I turned off the TV and went back to the garage. Some stories don't have clean endings, and some people never learn from their mistakes. But that wasn't my problem anymore. Ruby came home that evening full of stories about her weekend with Elise. They'd gone to the zoo and the movies, and Elise had let her stay up late to watch cartoons. It sounded like they'd had a good time, which was all I really cared about. "Mom seems different," Ruby said as I tucked her into bed. "Different how?" "Sadder, I guess, but also nicer. She actually listened when I talked instead of looking at her phone all the time." "People change sometimes," I said, "usually when they realize they need to. Are you going to start dating someone new?" The question caught me off guard. "I don't know. Maybe someday. Would that bother you?" "As long as she's nice to me and doesn't try to change the way you make pancakes, I think it would be okay." "Deal," I said, kissing her forehead. "Now get some sleep." I went downstairs and sat on the front porch, enjoying the quiet evening air. The neighborhood was settling down for the night, porch lights coming on, families gathering for dinner, the comfortable rhythms of ordinary life. A year ago, I'd thought I had a good marriage and a stable life. I'd been wrong about the marriage, but right about the stability. The difference was that now my stability was built on truth instead of lies, on choices I'd made instead of choices that had been made for me. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Saw the news about Nathan. Hope you're doing well. Fee." I texted back, "Doing great. Thanks for everything." "Thank you too. Some people get exactly what they deserve." I put the phone away and sat back in my chair, watching the stars come out one by one. Tomorrow I'd get up and go to work, fix whatever was broken, and come home to my daughter. It was a simple life, but it was mine, and for the first time in years, that was enough.